Take the blame. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a Celtic State of Mind. Apologies that we're 60 seconds late. It's my fault. I'm Paul John Dykes, and I'm joined today from New Zealand by Ian Conroy and from Japan by Liam Carrigan. And before we go any further, Liam, that is a belter of football top. And I was just saying before we went live, one of the very few examples of a football top being able to pull tartan off and not do it in a kind of cheesy, kind of, shortbread fashion that Morton actually tried to do once, and it was horrific. That's a cracking jersey. Is that a retro or an original?
It's a retro. As much as I would love to get an original, unfortunately, this is a Chinese knockoff. But it's sorry if anyone from Japan Customs are listening. It's a legitimately sourced foreign garment. Of course. No, it's it's one I bought a couple of years ago, and it's my favourite Scotland top of all time. So
it's nice. It's nice.
It really. It gets comments, I was wearing it at school today, and the Waynes were like, "Oh, is that tartan?" I was like, "Yes." "Oh, that'll be a Scotland shirt then." "Yes."
I do recall around about that time. What we're talking? That's Euro '96, right? And I think that we had the jersey for a wee while before that, because I remember that was out when I was at school, 6th year at school. And for my art project, like you get the art folio for going to college and stuff. My design project was designing a new Celtic away strip. I have always, Ian, been an absolute Celtic kit pervert. So I designed this Celtic away jersey, and because we were with Umbro at the time, I based it on that jersey Liam's wearing, but I used the old Celtic tartan. And I remember looking at it thinking it was the greatest design of all time. But looking back, it was probably rotten. I've got it. I've got a picture of John Collins wearing it and all this kind of stuff. So there you go, Ian. I know that you're a jersey aficionado. Nobody in the comment section wants to talk about football jerseys today. Everybody wants to talk about Feyenoord tomorrow night, our kind of failed Champions League campaign, the mood in the camp, the mood that is coming from the board to Brendan Rodgers. It's coming from the board to the fan base via the Green Brigade and the 4 Tims boys who have been banned from the fan media press conferences. We want to talk about all that. What's happened to this holy trinity? Ian, together, right, Celtic are an unstoppable force. But for some strange reason, from time to time, we just start falling out with each other. And I think you've got Brendan Rodgers banging on about the recruitment, right, just in advance of the January transfer window opening. He's not very happy. And you've got these issues, these fractured relationships between the ultras and the board, and then fan media and the board. All these tiny margins, Ian. We need everybody together to pull this back on track.
Yeah, I think the word I used, I think when we talked about the Green Brigade last time, was the ego side of things. We all have it, and it kind of can get in the way of all manner of things. When it comes to the football side of things, and Brendan did speak about that unity, I'm a firm believer in it myself. It's like it doesn't work any other way in a family unit, in a work environment. No matter what it is, you need unity if you're going to do something collectively. And that's kind of, it seems like the wheels will fall off a little bit. I'm not going to prescribe and get sucked into this kind of like, it's all doom and gloom, right? I'm going to, first and foremost, right, in life, without humour, we're all knackered, right? So we've got to retain our humour, right, and level of just not flip out here, right? We've been playing poorly for a bit. Brendan's given mixed messages in the media, whether that's some kind of psychological games with the board, or messages as we all sort of alluded to, or whether it's to the players, or whether it's a mixture of both. I don't know, but ultimately, Brendan's come out and he's taken responsibility for the recruitment, so we have to take him at his word. But then he can't, by the same token, bitch and moan about it, or put veiled sort of references into his displeasure, without having some kind of causative effect. And that is only going to affect unity, if he's chucking certain people under the bus. I agree that certain players don't seem to be the level, but he's just got to get on with it. And I don't know whether it was because he didn't come in time to get the players that he actually wanted. Excuse me. I don't know. But at the moment, it's just time for calm heads, right? I don't believe that the challenge is going to be as strong as we think it might be. Obviously, there's other reasons that we're all talking about as well that might have aided and abetted certain aspects of other teams, playing catch up. But assuming that, as Joaquin said, but if we're good enough these things don't matter. I think we're going to do it. I think we'll be all right. I don't think it'll be another sort of season the way we all sort of capitulated during the COVID season. I think we've got more in our locker for that, and I think Brendan's the right man to tweak this team to give it new energy. I'm rambling on a bit here, so I won't keep going on. But for me, the biggest issue at the moment on the park is the lack of energy and the lack of application. It seemed, compared to what Ange had set up, the players have dropped down 2 or 3 levels in terms of speed in their play and that incisive thinking. You have to have your mind has to be working for your body to do it to respond to these signals. Your brain sent to your legs, and it's exponentially dropped down. This more passive, slow build up. It was turgid toward the end of Brendan's tenure the last time, and it's almost like he started out that way. We've not got a Scott Sinclair, a dynamic Scott Sinclair that's doing these, creating that dynamism that he had the first time around. So I think he needs to just, with 1 or 2 tweaks, perhaps there's some disgruntlement in the dressing room as well. I think 1 or 2 tweaks going to be back on track. Whether it's too soon to see a decent performance against Feyenoord, I don't know. But knowing Celtic will probably do really well now the pressure's off. But at least then it can show some green shoots of recovery and sort of a nod to next season if we do have a good result, because I think they were there for the taking last time, apart from the 2 sendings off. So with a home crowd behind us, we have to be united and get behind the team and see how we can do tomorrow.
Some great points here, Ian. I'm going to throw some of them over to Liam over in Japan. The first one I'm going to say is I remember talking about humour, and it is very, very important. And I've often been described as taking myself too seriously on this show, Liam, because I like to keep things nice and tight and professional. But listen, I always remember being at Tynecastle with my old man, and no, I wasn't a Hearts fan. I was in the Celtic end, in case anybody wants to throw Paul John Dykes as a Hearts fan into the mix as well. I was at this game, and I remember it was during the Liam Brady era. And the day, I don't know why this particular game vividly stays in my mind, because we got beat 3-1, right? And I should have checked the wiki, but it just came to mind when Ian was telling me about it. Tommy Coyne scored for Celtic. I was a massive fan of Tommy Coyne because he shared the same hair colour and hairstyle as my dad. And all these years later, my dad's hair's never changed. It's still the same. And some people still call him Tommy. Or Terry, after Terry McCann from Minder. So the old man and myself are standing there, and my fellas had a few bevies and all this kind of stuff, the cheap wine and all that. I'm just a kid. And I always remember it was the day, Liam, that the Celtic fans were basically laughing at ourselves, and we started singing Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. Now,
I remember that. Yeah.
It was raining, it was dull. My memory's telling me it was like November time. I'd need to check the wiki to find that. It was definitely a wintry kind of game where you're standing there freezing cold and you only want a bovril to keep your hands warm kind of thing. And we started singing Always Look on the Bright Side. And I think we had played maybe Manchester United in one of these, what became regular testimonial games at the time. And it might have started doing at Old Trafford during one of these. It might have been the Brian Robson testimonial, if memory serves me, perhaps. Again, my timeline could well be out. But we've always had that humour, Liam, and it is important, right, that you can't just sit and laugh as the house burns down, pandemic style, during that COVID season. But you do also have to have a bit of humour about it. I mean, yeah, we're dead serious about Celtic. Celtic is a 24/7 love and passion for every single person that appears on this show. But at the same time, there's always time for a bit of crack, right? And the reason I'm bringing all this up is that I opened the show up talking about the fact that there's been fallouts. We don't know for sure what the situation is between Brendan Rodgers and his dissatisfaction with the recruitment team, for example, because I always just say the board. I mean, obviously that there's various different levels between them and a player coming into the club. But the 4 Tims boys, I mean, you yourself, Liam, you're from Celtic Down Under. This weekend, we are doing the charity weekend, or it's the 4th year in a row that we've hosted it. And the reason we do it is twofold. The priority is to bring in as much money as we possibly can at this time of the year for someone or a group of people who are less fortunate than us. And we try to do it in a way of a kind of community, like this unity that Ian was talking about, where Celtic pods come together. It's all on Acsom. It's 24 hours of content. And the Four Tims boys, I'm going back to the humour thing. They've been on it, I think, twice. I think they've done 2 of the previous 3 years. And their crack was brilliant. They're obviously, a lot of what they're saying is tongue-in-cheek, Liam. You know, it's like they're laughing at themselves like what we did back in the day at Tynecastle. You know what I mean? And for example, if there's an issue with, let's say, tech or whatever, they'll just laugh at themselves. They're not taking themselves too seriously. Yet I was saddened to hear that the club have stamped down, and I'm not even sure why. I don't know if it was due to content on their site or if it was something they said on the podcast, but it was something against the club. Now, you can't have that attitude, Liam, whereby you criticise me and you're out. I mean, certainly not with fan media. I mean, I can see the sense. Sometimes I see headline after headline from the same journalist in Scotland, and I look at it and think, there's no wonder you've been banned from Celtic before. I mean, there's a famous picture of Hugh Keevins outside the Celtic Supporters Club on London Road because he'd been banned for Celtic Park, if you'll remember. So I can see the sense of it, and it sometimes if someone is deliberately trying to damage the club by just running negative stories constantly. But these Four Tims boys are Celtic fans now. I think it's a dodgy road to start going down. I believe, that the clubs have done this. I think it's the wrong decision.
Look, coming from a journalism background myself, the notion of censorship gets thrown around a lot these days, and a lot of it is erroneous. People say, "Oh, I'm being censored, I'm being cancelled." No, you're not. You're being held to consequence for your actions, right? But in this case, this is completely out of order from Celtic. To the best of my knowledge, that those boys have never posted anything racist, never anything sectarian, never anything overtly offensive to public decency. So have they criticised Celtic? Yes. Have they criticised players? Probably. Have they criticised the manager? Almost certainly. I did yesterday. And, that is part of being fan media, is that we apply a critical eye to ourselves as much as we do to everyone else. Right, we have a laugh at the opposition, such as they are. We have a laugh at the media, such as they are. But we also have to look at situations where we are not doing the right thing. I mean, that's why Chris Sutton is so respected by the Celtic support, because he's not afraid to criticise when we're going the wrong way.
Definitely.
And if the club starts shutting that down, that's really, really a dark road to go down. I mean, I'll say it straight up. You take that to the most extreme point. That is what killed the old Rangers. If they had actually listened to people outside of their hardcore, we are the people, whatever nonsense, and just said, "Wait a minute, you're right. This isn't right. Something's got to be done." Maybe they could have saved their club from dying. I'm not saying for a second that's going to happen to Celtic, but we know from very recent history that there are dark consequences when clubs start banning everybody who doesn't stay on message. It's not a good road to go down. It doesn't look good. It does not promote unity, which, as you say, is what we need, particularly tomorrow night. We really need a united support. And I have never seen, probably since 2020, I haven't seen the Celtic support as disparate and as, excuse my language, for want of a better phrase, just pissed off with each other since then. Because, you've got some people saying it's the manager's fault. You've got some people saying it's the board's fault. You've got some people saying the players just aren't doing it. You have others who are like, "Oh, this is just, as usual, we're shooting ourselves in the foot from a position of power." And, there's truth in all of those arguments, I think, to a certain degree. But none of that is going to help us at the moment unless we can get our act together.
No.
So we've got to just, I stand by what I said at the start of the season, right? In terms of looking at the bigger picture. If we come out of the New Year Glasgow derby still ahead of them, we'll win the league. I said that in August, and I stand by it now. As long as we are still ahead of them going into the winter shutdown, we win this league. Because in January we will. I don't think we'll strengthen to the extent that everyone's hoping, or perhaps even that the manager is hoping. But I do think that we will strengthen, and we'll get this league title over the line. What happens after that is anybody's guess. But I really do think we're still going to win this title. We're not. It's not like 2020 where losing a home game suddenly put us 10 points behind. We are still top of the league. And there is no guarantee that the other mob are going to win their games in hand. So, I'm not worried about them. I am worried about us. And I think that is where the focus needs to stay between now and January.
Without a doubt. I mean, we've got a clutch of games now, starting tomorrow night, where we need to get the momentum going. So I've seen the final game being described as a dead rubber. I think it's certainly not that, for a number of reasons. The first one I'm going to point out is you start a run of games and you get that momentum back with an eye on the game on the 30th of December at Celtic Park. There's also the added incentive, of course, of Champions League points, earning you coefficient points and earning you money. The financial element of being in the Champions League, you win a game and it's worth something like £2.5 million to the club. That's part of it. But also, you can then have a look back at and judge your entire campaign over the 6 games. And if you've got that win, then you've got that monkey off your back, because we haven't had that win in so long at home in the Champions League and in the Champions League, home and away. So there's a lot, I think, riding on tomorrow night's game. It cannot be written off. It needs to be taken really seriously, not in isolation, but more in the respect to the games that are coming up. But quite a few things you've been saying there, Liam, about unity. 4 Tims in a podcast, it won't make any difference to them, and it won't make any difference to the bigger picture if they're not at a press conference. But what it shows is this, fragmentation of a relationship between fan and club. That's one representation of it. The other, of course, is the Green Brigade and the Ultras situation at the football club as well. Celtic Park is famed, Ian, and you will have been yourself over the length of time you've supported Celtic at some famous European nights. They're famed. The club are famed for the atmosphere, the fact that it can give you an element, an energy that, we do things at Celtic Park, or we have done. We've not been doing it enough recently. That seems absolutely impossible. I mean, one of the famous examples, of course, is 2012 against Barcelona. And I was just watching that game just recently, actually, because my wee fella's at that age, Ian, where obviously Barcelona and all this kind of thing, it's almost as if it's a brand that kids become aware of alongside things like Prime, PlayStation. Barcelona's up there with these brands that, the media and iPads and all that are feeding all the time, and all the kids in the school are wearing the jerseys. So I said, listen, son, I'm going to show you a game that Barcelona played in Glasgow a few years ago. And there's your man Messi, the greatest of all time, really. Well, we won 2-1. Tony Watt, there's a player, wee Tony. And the thing that actually it reminded me of, Ian, and I spoke about this yesterday with Big Lloyd up at Celtic Park when we did the Wonder, I had completely forgotten that Tony Watt was through on goal again after we were 2-0 up. Could you remember that? And he gets pulled down. Mascherano pulls him down. And we get none for it. We don't even get a free kick, never mind the sending off. And Tony Watt was about to put us 3 up. Can you remember that, Ian?
I can't remember that bit, no. I was over here, actually, the first time I lived here. So I saw that in the morning. I skied off work. Luckily, I was working around the corner, so I nipped back to my wee apartment, and I put the rest of the game on. I couldn't believe it, but I can't remember that bit, to be honest.
It's brilliant to watch these things back, because there's moments. I mean, you can visualise Charlie Mulgrew taking that corner that is met with the absolute commander that was Victor Wanyama. Great goal. You remember the clearance from Foster to Tony Watt, the commentary, the whole lot. But there's wee elements when you watch it again. The fact that Effie Ambrose is playing centre half and Miku's playing up front, and Tony Watt almost scored another goal at the end. And Celtic Park can be a special theatre when it comes to football. On nights like tomorrow night, yeah, you can say, listen, it means nothing. I'm saying it does. It means plenty, because we need to get back into the groove theory. And I'm focusing on Kyogo at the moment. And I understand people are saying, Kyogo, what about the defence? Yeah, that's another issue entirely. But if you were to look at the last couple of years and you were to, over the piece, say who was the most important player for Celtic over the last 2 years during Ange Postecoglou's tenure, I think Kyogo, with most fans, would be in the top 2 or 3. With most fans, people would say Carter Vickers was pivotal, or Kyogo was pivotal. Yeah, absolutely. Or McGregor, maybe. But Kyogo this season, and in the last few games mainly, has been a bit of a shadow of his former self, Ian. And what I'm trying to say here is we need to put a bit of focus on him, get him playing back to his strengths. And even if it means that the wingers are playing absolutely exclusively to Kyogo's strengths, do it, because it will be worthwhile, because the actual benefits and the results of that are wins, fluid football, goals for Kyogo. This tempo that you were talking about, Ian, it's so noticeable, isn't it? And I spoke at the beginning of the season with Kevin McCluskey about the fact that Brendan Rodgers can kill a game for 20, 25 minutes. He speaks about it himself. He talks about how you can rest with the ball and all this kind of stuff. But what then happens is if you're resting with the ball but you're not tight enough at the back, then you're chasing the game. And once you're out the game, it's difficult. I find that it's been difficult for Celtic to get back in, and that's been the issue. So tomorrow night, Ian, let's have a wee think about Kyogo. First question I'm going to ask you: does he make it back into the starting 11? I mean, the big fella, I think he was deserving of a start. He was deserving to keep his jersey. He wasn't that great, was he, really, at the weekend? And he should have scored at least one goal. Does Kyogo come back in? And if so, do we play to his strengths? Do we actually shape the wingers, make sure that the deliveries that they're putting in are to Kyogo's benefit?
It's an absolute must. In terms of I think I thought he had a decent first half against Kilmarnock. He was the one shining light for me that was chasing down everything. I like the fact that he was challenging and trying to put the keeper off, which is kind of a bit of a throwback as well. You don't see that in sort of modern football anymore, but he showed the most commitment out of any Celtic player on the park in the first half for me against Kilmarnock. So I'm one of these guys. I wouldn't mind seeing the two of them get the nod to see how much damage they can do together. But absolutely fundamentally, if he doesn't play, is that we play to Kyogo's strengths. He's such a clever player, and I think the advantage that he gives us, because he's such a good player, and he can play on the shoulder, we can play the more riskier passes because he can deal with them and get a shot off. Right, the way Brendan's got it set up these days, we're taking more time to get the ball forward. We're going back, side to side, back, side to side, and it's whereas under Ange we were progressing. I hate the modern terms of football, but through the lines. We're these interchanges, with the inverted wing back, fullbacks and stuff like that, pulling the opposition players in all kinds of different situations that they didn't want to be in, and playing these balls quickly up to Kyogo where he was taking advantage. At the moment, it's too laboured, so we're allowing our opponents to be able to predict us. We've got that predictability. Yeah. And we haven't got the smarts to, the personnel to do that. We're not a Barcelona or of old, or Atletico Madrid the other night when we played them. When I said they're knocking the ball around like a ping ball, but with intent and on purpose, because they're all brilliant players. We haven't got the capability to do that, so it slows it down. It slows the pace of the game down, and it's playing at the opposition hands. Especially when Celtic, the opposition are quite happy to let us have the ball all the time in our league. So to utilise Kyogo, he's got to play in that on the shoulder and really really a high line, and yeah, the wingers need to be bought into that.
Yeah, without a doubt, and I want to talk specifically about the wingers. I've seen the footage coming out of Sky Sports this morning that Maeda and indeed Carter Vickers are part of the training session today, preparing for Feyenoord. I think that's massive. There's a whole discussion that we're going to have around that left-hand side of the park with regards to Maeda, Taylor's form, and by the way, I think they're connected. When Maeda's not playing, Taylor's form drops off the edge of a cliff. We'll have a wee look at that. Let's get some of your comments up. Jungle Lion, always an absolute pleasure to see you. This season can be fixed. This is where I am as well, Jungle Lion. But we need everyone pulling in the same direction, and it's not. And I think that's the reason I was bringing up at the top of the show the relationships that at the moment seem to be a bit fractured. So you've got that relationship between Brendan Rodgers and recruitment. I'm just going to call it recruitment at the moment because there's a recruitment team, obviously, a scouting network that we've got. And we've got a board of directors, and obviously they we'll be looking at budgets and that kind of thing. So it's all interconnected. But yeah, we need to keep everybody pulling in the same direction. How horrific would it be tomorrow night if we look at the Feyenoord game, there's empty seats? Champions League, that's what we want, and it's all a bit of a damp squib at the moment. Michael Ross, great to see you coming in. You're commenting on YouTube as well, and if you want to make a comment on YouTube, get involved in the discussion, both within the comment section and also with the contributors here. All you need to do is subscribe. It's free of charge. Get subscribing and get commenting. Michael Ross, it's a treble-winning squad, more than good enough. Domestically, Rodgers has dragged us down. You get the sense of that. I think I've been probably quite not defensive, but I have backed Brendan from the day that he walked in the building, Liam. There are things, however, that come down to decision-making where you're looking at... I'll give you an example, Liam, right? And this might be a very small one. And I'm not saying that Ange did everything right, because no manager ever does, right? But one thing about Ange Postecoglou, when he was asked questions about his players, it was pointed out to a friend of mine, Shug, just last night to me. Ange was always a wee bit... He kept his cards close to his chest, particularly when it came to injuries. It could be frustrating for fans, because you'd want to know, when's this one coming back? When's that one? And he was always very guarded about it, Liam. But rightly so, because what you're doing, and Brendan Rodgers does it, he gives you absolute specifics about players. What you're doing is you're telling your opposition how to prepare for the game. So they're going into a game knowing X, Y, and Z is fit and will play, and there's no element of surprise. Whereas Ange Postecoglou always kept it close to his chest, didn't he, Liam? It's a tiny, tiny wee thing. But there's one thing being open and being engaging and all this, because Brendan is brilliant at that in press conferences. Obviously, there's things that Ange did that I'm looking at now thinking, wow, you didn't like that guy, did you? Every time a certain journalist asked a question, you knew Ange was going to...
Every time he called somebody mate, we knew what he actually meant, you know.
To the point where you're actually going back to the fan media thing, Liam, you're going, do you fancy doing this? I mean, you don't want to say anything wrong to the big man. Brendan's not like that. He's absolutely not like that. But sometimes I wish he would rein it in a wee bit, Liam. He's given too much out.
The thing is about Brendan Rodgers now, cards on the table. I mean, anybody who watched us during the summer will know that I was a lot more kind of, so we say, skeptical about him coming back than you were. And I said at the time that Brendan Rodgers' biggest obstacle might be himself, because great manager though he is, the man has an ego, right? He clearly has quite an ego, and that comes through in some of the interactions you see him having with the press and whatever. But the point is, a good manager, and he is a good manager, he needs to, how do I say this? He needs to set his ego aside and realize that what he's doing right now isn't working. He's got like, I want to play my system and I'm going to get the players in January to do it. And I feel it's screaming at him, Brendan, we had a system last season that was working and we were smashing teams in the league quite easily, right? If you have the players to play that system and it's about getting results above all else, put your ego aside, put the Brendan ball or whatever you want to call it aside, and play how we played last season, right? Let the wingers get the service to Kyogo, give Kyogo the freedom to go forward and do what he does. Put Big O in there when necessary. He's shown that he's more than capable. I agree with Ian. I would start with the two of them tomorrow night, because I think there's something there if we can make it work. And I just wish that we could just kind of go back to how things were. I mean, I made the joke in our chat at the weekend, all I want is Ange back and a bag of cans, but that's not going to happen, right? So we've got to work with what we've got. And that's the mantra. Brendan Rodgers too has got to work with what he's got. We need to win that game on the 30th. We need to put on a good showing tomorrow night to at least stop the rot in Europe. Mm-hmm. A win tomorrow night, regardless of what it means for this season, is marked progress on last season, because we didn't get a win last season.
Yeah.
Right. So it shows we're better. We're moving in the right direction, even if we're not happy with how the team's playing at the moment. But yeah, I just think that we've got the resources, we've got the tools, we've got the talent. We just need to pull it together. And we're not doing that right now.
We're far from doing it. And this is the thing as well, right? Obviously, tomorrow night, I want us to win. The board will look at that, Liam, and say, well, that is progress. We've got double the amount of points from the board than we did last year. So they'll see it as progress. Then they'll maybe try and justify the recruitment that we had in the summer window, which I don't think is justifiable, because the more we see, the more we realise that either players are not ready, they're progress project players, or they're never going to be ready. And that's 9 players coming in. And I spoke again. There's reasons, Ian, why people are comparing the season to the COVID season. It's not as bad as that. Of course it isn't. There was so much happening with ball and golly, flying over to Spain on the fly, the Dubai thing. You know, I mean, it was a disaster, as well as everything else that was happening globally. But the reason people are comparing it is because of the fractured nature of relationships between fan and board, fan and club, and also the relationships that we were actually seeing disintegrating within the football side of things. Because Lenny came out and he tried to. I'm not saying he didn't try and throw them under a bus. I think he tried to jolt them into life, but he used the wrong words. He basically said, "There's guys in that dressing room don't want to play here, and they haven't wanted to play here for months." And it didn't work, and we capitulated. The reason that we're comparing this season to that season is the fact that there's issues with relationships, be that between fan bases and the club, or certain departments and the gaffer. And also, we didn't win the league. And we didn't win the league. And when you look back, it's because we were so poor. It wasn't as though we were overpowered by a free-flowing, entertaining, phenomenal football side. It just, we were so bad. And going back to what Jungle Lion said in the comments, this is salvageable. It's absolutely salvageable, but there's certain things we need to do differently to make it so. Liam's talking about going back to basics almost. Let's go back to a system where we know that it's going to work. I think in a few tiny wee ways, Brendan's done that, because he's come in and I think initially he didn't fancy the inverted role, even though, you know, listen, he's played inverted fullbacks himself previously at other clubs. It looks as though he didn't fancy it. But now when I look at it, I'm thinking maybe it wasn't the actual system and the shape. Maybe it was the personnel he didn't fancy. Because I'm now looking at Greg Taylor, and I did give him a real hard time after the Kelly game, because I thought his positional play was dreadful for an international footballer with that level of experience. I mean, he's played 150 games for Celtic now. And I think that it's nothing to do with where we signed him or because he's not a sexy footballer from another league. It's nothing to do with that. I'm just looking at both goals. I'm asking myself, where's Greg Taylor? Because the ball's coming down his side. He's making Scales look bad because Scales has been stretched. You see it on both occasions. And there was a couple of occasions in the first half. So I think that there's been some things that Rodgers has done wrong, but there's been other things that, Greg Taylor's been exposed this season, Ian. But a big part of that is the guy in front of him has to have defensive abilities. I'm not so sure Palmer's got it. Maeda, if he's fit, does he come straight back in for you?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think Maeda should come back in. He is that pest. He's almost like having two players at times. You know, he covers so much ground. His final ball obviously is not the best, and his decision making is not always the best. I think we've all conceded before that if he had those things in his locker, then he wouldn't be at Celtic. And if he does improve upon those, then he probably will be a likely sale. So, but yeah, I think we have to bring him back in. We're relying on too many of the project players. I don't think any of these guys would have. I don't think they would have been sort of certain starters had we had not had the injuries perhaps, and we'd had more of a settled side. Going back to what you were saying before, Liam, it's like going back to basics is absolutely, it's what we almost do. If you're having struggles in anything, right, you've got to go back to the basics, start doing the basic things well again. Like if a player's having a bad game, you always say, just keep it simple. Just keep it nice till you get your rhythm back. What I'm not seeing at the moment, and Brendan is called out, he wants unity, and I don't know whether it's that ego part that's playing into it, but he's the public-facing patriarch. He must be the man that ties it together and creates that unity.
Yeah.
So we all responded as fans when he came out and he was angry, Brendan, when he was calling it as it was, as we saw it, and we thought, right, finally, he's shown a bit of, some bahookies, and it's so. But then the week after following the St Johnstone, so it's following the Kilmarnock defeat, he seemed to be a bit more passive again. Now whether that's he's done that on purpose, you can't do it every week, otherwise it'll lose its power, it'll lose its weight if he's angry all the time. Or whether he's kind of like just throwing his hands up in the air and he's almost given up with this group. He can't do that, I trust Brendan. He's an elite level coach, and it's over a season. So I don't know, and it's like sometimes I think as well, not in a conspiratorial way, but it's not necessarily bad for business for a title race to be on. It's exciting for the TV companies. It's like we've got so much money in the bank. We could go so far in advance of this of our closest rivals if we wanted to. Obviously we've got to get the recruitment right, but we choose not to do it time and time again. Whether that's plays it in the board's hands of being able to keep the money in the bank, or whether it's it suits them to not advance too far ahead and to just swat away all comers. It's there's not a bad, it's maybe not a bad shout, to think about things like that along those terms as well. I think that was the same in the COVID season.
I've heard a lot of people talking about that, Ian. And Kevin Graham, to be fair, in the 6.5 years that we have been broadcasting as a podcast, as a stream, creating video content, Kevin's always maintained that he believes that is the kind of basis of the board's ambition, just to stay a whisker ahead of the opposition. Because, as you say, they think it's good for business. I think it's a disaster waiting to happen, because you can't. There's no exact science to just stay a whisker above everybody else. I think I would much rather subscribe to the vision of trying to improve as a European team, and the domestic football will look after itself, because you'll be so strong, your standards will be so high that you'll deal with the domestic side of things. I look back at the summer transfer, and I'm hoping there's no way all the ills will be resolved in January. It's not happening. We can start building towards that. But when I look at the summer transfer window, I think to myself, right, we lost 3 players, Jota, Moy, Starfelt. We lost those 3 guys, right? I think to improve, you bring 4 in, and that's the magical figure that Brendan keeps using. Now, if over and above that, there's 1 or 2 opportunities, because I remember when they were talking about Matt O'Reilly being an opportunity, that situation presented itself. It wasn't by design. It's not like we'd been tracking him and all this like Tellio for 2 years. It presented itself. We realised, listen, it's a bit of a low risk, £1.5 million for this guy, bring him in, and it's paid off. Whenever that happens, Celtic we've got to act on it, and we bring in a player like that, absolutely. But to base your entire transfer window on bringing that type of player in is a huge mistake. And to bring in 9 players into a treble-winning dressing room, I think, is also a massive mistake. And I've spoken about the fact that becomes quite a big percentage of your dressing room. It becomes a big percentage of your training ground, and it can start to actually mould and influence the culture or the mentality of your team and your squad. So that's why I would never, ever expect Celtic to make such wholesale changes. I would much rather have seen that amount of people leaving the building, because we've got so many non-contributing players. I think we did need 4 players of quality. And even if 2 of them came in a la CCV and Jota, whereby we knew there was going to be a big transfer fee at the end of it, but there's an option to buy them. You bring them in for a season, there's an option to buy at the end. And I'm definitely not going to go down the road of anybody telling me that Nat Phillips and Paulo Bernardo were those 2 players, because they simply were not. They look like short-term fixes. The Urban Culture. Anyway, back for a bit of Acsom therapy. I hope that we give you a wee bit of that. There's a few folks saying, oh, it was all doom and gloom yesterday. Listen, it wasn't our fault we got beat with Kilmarnock. We've got to have to talk about the game yesterday. Focus of management and players needs to be on the Hearts game. I'm not interested in the 1 million up for grabs. Right, Liam, we've already spoken about the benefit, the financial benefit. We get it, right? The bounty that you get from being a Champions League. I think what's more important than that is the momentum. We need to start, as of tomorrow night, building the momentum for the 30th. So I get that the Hearts game's massive, totally. But I also think that to perform in the Hearts game, it starts tomorrow night.
Look, I mean, if you ask me right now, would I take getting pumped 3-0 tomorrow, but we win the next 5 games in the league? Yes, I would take that absolutely all day long, right? But like you say, it's a statement. If we can just go out and finally win a game in the Champions League for first time in God knows how long, that would really mentally have a big impact. Plus, £2.5 million isn't to be sniffed at, right? I believe it's £2.5 million a win, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So
that would buy you Odin Thiago home.
It would also bankroll the Celtic women's team for the next 2 years, but that's another story.
That definitely is.
The thing is the whole aura around the club right now is a bit negative, which is why we might come across as a bit negative trying to talk about it. But yeah, tomorrow night is a chance to put down a statement, to put some smiles back on people's faces, and to just go out there and play football. But we need to go out and play progressive attacking football, which we have not been playing in the last couple of months, if I'm being honest. Celtic, I mean, there's quite a few commenters. I've been dipping in and out of the comments today, and I've noticed there's quite a few people saying that this is the most boring Celtic team they've watched in quite some time. And I totally get that. It is not as bad as 2020 in terms of where we are in the league, right? Definitely not. But I remember back then having a feeling of dread watching Celtic. Like, oh God, are we, I just hope we can win this game. And to be honest, Kilmarnock game the other day, I was starting to get that same feeling. And I thought, oh God, I'm going back to where we were then. And that's really not where we want to be. And I think there's a lot of fans probably, I wouldn't presume to speak for the entire fan base, because I certainly don't, but I think there is a lot of people of a similar mind to me at the moment. There's just that feeling of dread at watching Celtic at the minute, because you just don't know which team's going to turn up.
Thinking back, it is horrendous what happened that season. I mean, talking about an implosion. Yeah, you're a triple treble winning side, and we absolutely shanked it, to use a golf term. We absolutely shanked it. Now, Craig B comes in to say, I've seen a lot of this from the comments. I've seen a lot of it on social media. And it seems to divide opinion, Craig. Scales to left back, anyone. I think we've seen him at left back. He looked like a very ordinary player for me, Ian, when he played left back for Celtic. But I understand what Craig's saying, because it's twofold, right? So if you play Scales at left back, what you're getting is you're getting more physicality than you do when you play Greg Taylor there. I don't think he's a natural left back. He said from day one, I remember his original press conference, he was asked the question, because he was given the squad number 5. He was asked the question, are you a left back or are you a centre half? He says, my best position is left centre back. Lo and behold, he starts playing there, and we see the real Liam Scales this season. And he gets a run of games. He needs a run of games. So I've got my reservations about pushing him out there, because, yeah, Taylor's an issue. Yes, Taylor will be targeted down the left-hand side. But you might actually lose the benefit of 2 players if you move Scales over there. You might not see the benefit of the Scales that we've seen, the resurgence that we've seen this season, Ian. If we do move him out there, however, and we stick to the same shape defensively, then it would allow us to bring in one of these centre-halves that we've barely seen this season, that we spent £7.5 million on. Because I don't think we'll be seeing Nat Phillips tomorrow night, even if Scalesy goes out to the left of defence. Can you see this being an option for Celtic, Ian? Or would you just say, you know what, Scales is doing fine where he is, let's not give him a bad game, because his momentum's going to change if he goes out there and doesn't perform well?
I said this before. I think it was when I said I'd seen him thinking the Daily Record. One of the journalists had sort of said that. It was actually echoed my thinking. I know I had that radical idea as well, because Brendan Rodgers likes. Remember, I wrote that blog and I said it reminded me like he was trying to he was practicing in front of the mirror to try and deliver edified greatness when he was every sentence he uttered in that being Liverpool thing. In other aspects, it's almost like he tries, he's identifying a player. Remember the old lottery advert where it was like, it's you, that big golden hand, right? And it's like, who's it going to be that he's going to change? He's going to put Joe Hart up front, And it's like, oh, what a tactical genius I am, I don't think this is as marked as that. But anyway, getting back to the Scales question, I think that he could play at left back. I don't know whether he's played in midfield or something in his earlier career, but he looks really comfortable in the ball. His distribution is really good.
Yeah,
from centre half. So I think Scales quite happily could play in midfield. If ever called upon. So with that in mind, I think he would have the smarts and the ability to play at fullback, and have that power. I think he'd do all right. And let's think as well, if that did happen and it wasn't working out, assuming that it was his replacement at left centre back wasn't sort of cutting the mustard, we could put Scalesy back into there and bring the wee man back on, bring Taylor back on. Should that ever happen? Whether it's the right game to do in Feyenoord, I don't know. Possibly, because it is essentially a dead rubber, but that money does mean something. But it would build confidence. Unless how Feyenoord fixed in the group now? Are they top still?
Feyenoord. Well, no, Feyenoord are just at this moment in time just above Celtic. Let me just
double check the
groups. Yeah, but with regards to the Scales question, obviously we've got James French on here, who has says to me that a few times he says to me that's his best position. Let's not go changing it, and also the very fact that when we did play him there previously, he did not shine. He didn't shine. He looked very ordinary. And
remember though, he's assimilated into the first team for a bit now, so that he might feel at home and comfortable in the first team. So it might, there's arguments for both sides, isn't there? Sorry to interrupt you there, but
no, there absolutely is. Yeah,
it might work now that he's now a first team pick on a regular basis. You never know. Anyway, sorry mate for interrupting.
No, Feyenoord are pretty safe in terms of the fact that they've qualified. They're going to drop into the Europa League. They're just above Celtic, but so I'm not going to say there's nothing for them to play for, because we've already spoken about the benefits of winning points and all the rest of it in the Champions League. But yeah, they're just above Celtic, and I think that the Liam Scales question, I think what I would more be focused on is what's in front of Taylor, and I would be looking at the fact that if Maeda comes back in, you've got to, on the one hand, focus on what I was saying about Kyogo earlier on, Liam, and I know you know both players inside and out, Kyogo and Maeda. Focus on playing to Kyogo's strengths and ensuring that we've got this talismanic presence up front who at the moment isn't getting a game. Turning that on its head, going back to the basics that we spoke about and ensuring that we're going to be delivering the types of balls that I think Kyogo thrives on. And one type of ball that he thrives on is where you're either your overlapping fullback or your winger hits that byline and plays a really sharp ball with pace low into the front post. And Kyogo has got the pace and the anticipation and the finishing ability to get in front of the defender and either head it or strike it goalwards. He's brilliant at that. He's absolutely phenomenal at that. And Maeda's good at delivering that type of ball. What we've seen a lot of is Yang and Palma in particular cutting inside and playing a ball into the box. Just continually playing these balls into the box, but you can play them all day long, and Kyogo's not getting into that position.
Yeah.
And he's certainly not competing with big towering centre halves. He's not winning headers against these guys. So on the one hand, you want Maeda to be part of that attacking plan. On the other hand, and he's got the engine to do it, Liam, you want him to absolutely protect Greg Taylor if Greg Taylor starts the game tomorrow night. He started every game this season, Greg Taylor.
Yeah.
So the chances are he will start tomorrow night. So Maeda, for me, is going to be one of the key players tomorrow. He's got to bring Kyogo back into the game. He's also got to protect Taylor behind him.
Yep, totally agree. I think that apart from anything else, if you've got one eye on the games that are coming up in the league, you want Maeda match sharp. So getting him at least an hour tomorrow night, whether win, lose or draw, is good for his fitness and his sharpness. So yeah, I think Maeda plays regardless of what formation we end up playing tomorrow night. But like you say, it takes a lot of the pressure off Taylor because he can basically play left wing and left back almost simultaneously, right? The pace of the guy is phenomenal. And he's got that relationship with Kyogo where he knows the type of ball that Kyogo wants. Yang and Palma, though I think Yang less so, but Palma in particular has shown a lot of promise in the games that he's played so far. But he has not shown that same, how should we say, interconnectivity with Kyogo that the likes of Jota had last season.
Yeah.
And that comes with time, right? That comes with time. It comes with getting to know the player's personality and getting to know what they do. It comes with training together, playing together. But we don't have time for that right now because we've got to get these league games back on track. And I think Palma and Yang will both become good contributing members of the Celtic squad in the fullness of time. But I think for tomorrow night, yeah, you put Maeda in on the left. And then the right is something that we have to think about as well. But I think Maeda has to be on that left wing, putting balls in for Kyogo and doing it properly.
No, without a doubt. And Brown Warrior says here, the type of ball he doesn't thrive on, talking about Kyogo, is a pass to Kyogo on the halfway line. But Brendan seems to think he's the new Dembele. You can take that pass, bully two defenders off and launch an attack. What I don't like seeing, Ian, is listen, we all become body language experts, don't we? When we're looking at sidelines and relationships between coaches and managers and players and all this. But Kyogo seems so isolated, and it actually shows. It's almost as if he's devoid of any kind of confidence at the moment. And I know that people have said since year dot that a striker thrives on confidence. They're confidence players. When the confidence is high, they're doing things without thinking about it. The goals are going in. There's no consideration for it. But it has seemed pretty, for me, isolated. And that, I hope, isn't a reflection of the fact that he's not enjoying his football. But when you look at these stats, 40 minutes into a game and he's touched the ball 3 times, how can you enjoy that? How can you possibly enjoy your football if you're not getting a kick of the ball? So for me, it is really tomorrow night. It's about Maeda. I think he's absolutely pivotal to this. And I don't think we've ever underestimated him. Liam Carrigan's been banging on about Maeda before we even signed him. We've never underestimated him, but by God, you miss him when he's not in the team, Ian. And I think we really have missed him, haven't we?
That's always the sign of how important a player is, isn't it? You know, I was guilty of that with Neil Lennon a little bit back in the day, where, you know, sometimes it was like, curse Lennon, for some of these kind of stray balls or whatever. But it was only when he wasn't playing, particularly in the Celtic Rangers games. If he wasn't playing for whatever reason, you really missed him, and then you appreciated the type, what he brought to the team. My head is the same. He still frustrates me at times with that football intelligence or lacking. But a lot of footballers do, especially in modern times. Listen to Grandad again, but it's a huge part of the game is the football intelligence side. When to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. So it's if he can improve that aspect of his game, I think he's going to be a superstar. But even at that, his importance is huge. And the fact that at the moment we're kind of struggling for a bit of confidence and a bit of identity, he will come in and sort of build back that sort of original template of what our identity has been in recent years. I think that he's integral.
Talking about identity, I've heard a lot of Celtic fans talking about that. They're not quite sure what the shape and the style is. And I've used the term the old Jekyll and Hyde because we have seen this season. Liam, we have seen this season that when it works, it works. I mean, Atletico Madrid 2 each. I think I was calling Brendan Rodgers a tactical mastermind during that game because he actually seen that there was trouble ahead and Atletico Madrid had made some changes at half-time and they had us on the back foot after a brilliant first half and he changed it defensively and he brought in Nat Phillips. Now, people might have said, under Ange we'd have gone for a third and we probably would have. And we might have lost the game 4-3 and it might have been a phenomenal European night at Celtic Park despite the loss. But I was talking about the fact that, it wasn't as good to watch. And yes, he's killed the game for long periods in the second half. But it was tactically mature. And we've seen performances like that. We've seen games where we've absolutely blown teams away, like Aberdeen. Not so much Hibs. The 4-1 game, I thought we were much better than the opposition, very deserving of the win. We never quite blew them away in the same style as we did against Aberdeen, the 6-0 game. But we've seen performances this season, Liam, that gives me a bit of hope that there is something still there. Of course there is. But we need to get a consistency of team selection. We need to get this fluidity. It's almost as if Palma has a great game one week and he's rotten the next. And there's a few players that have kind of suffered from that, isn't there?
Well, that comes from lack of consistently playing the same team, chopping and changing. Ange did talk a lot about squad rotation when he was in charge, but more or less, if he had his best 11 available, those were the guys that played. And with Brendan Rodgers, we're not really sure who the best 11 is at the moment because nobody's really playing well. And I'm going to chuck the proverbial hand grenade into the comments here because this might not be popular, but I need
a sound effect. I need a sound effect when you say that, Liam. So I can just press the button.
Oh God, no! Right. What I'm going to say is that if you're the Celtic manager, that is a special position in the sense that just winning games is not enough, right? We do not accept just winning games. If we win a game 1-0 and it's dire to watch and it's boring, fans are not going to be happy with that in the long term, right? So I think that it's not enough to just get results, which we're not getting at the moment either. We need to play good, attacking, entertaining football while we're doing it. Celtic fans expect that and Celtic fans demand that. And I'm one of them. I don't like the way we're playing football this season. It's not fun to watch. It's sport. Sport is supposed to entertain you, right? The whole point of football is that it's 90 minutes of escapism from whatever anxieties or troubles we have in our daily lives. That is the whole point of football, for me anyway. I wouldn't presume to speak for everybody, but for me personally, it's a 90-minute get out from whatever is bugging me that week. And it should be entertaining. And Celtic are not entertaining at the moment, even when we win. The Hibs game being an example, right? We won 4-1, clearly the better team. It was not a particularly exciting game to watch, if we're being brutally honest, was it?
No, it wasn't. But see that entertainment that you're talking about. You go back to Bertie Auld, and virtually every time he spoke about Celtic, you heard them. Big Jock told us to entertain and all this, right? We've heard it. It's become part of folklore. But even going back to that game I mentioned at Tynecastle, where it was rotten. The stadiums were horrible back then. The weather was terrible. The pies weren't great. And the team on the park were terrible as well. But you enjoyed it because you look forward to it all week. I'm a kid at the time, Liam, but the old fella, he was a pitman. You imagine the week he's just had. And then you get this release to go out and have a few bevies and enjoy a game of football and all the crack on the CSC. I'm talking about patter, not the other type of crack, on the bus going through and everything else. So you're right. As a football fan, you want to be entertained. And what they've done down in the EPL is they've packaged it as if it's the most entertaining thing in the world. I used to call it the WWF of football because once you actually sit down and watch it, it's not that entertaining. It's boring, right? But with Celtic, and we have been entertained, and we've had entertaining managers and teams in recent times. But the example I would use, Ian, to kind of back up Liam's point, is Ronny Deila. Ronny Deila won 2 leagues in a row. He won a double in the first season. Should have won a treble, but we know why we didn't. And by season 2, in the European games, we were shut in the top tier because nobody was interested. And I mean that in the best possible terms, because we still went, we still bought season tickets and all the rest of it. But the football wasn't great to watch. And by the end of the second season, no one was complaining when Ronny Deila left the club. I think he's a great coach. I think he'll do great things. And I've said on here before, eventually he'll be the Norway manager. He has spoken himself to Acsom, actually. There's an interview on the YouTube channel, check it out. But he's spoken about the fact that the job was too big for him at that time, at that stage of his career. But he couldn't turn it down because opportunity was massive. But going back to what Liam's saying, we've not really had that identity and that entertainment value that as Celtic fans, we think it's part of the fabric of supporting this football club, Ian.
Yeah, I sound like I'm still sort of the president of the Ange Postecoglou fan club. The amount of times I hark back to him.
The New Zealand branch.
Exactly. Yeah, we say mate here as well a lot. The reason I'm saying that actually is because I was just thinking before, just sort of when you guys were chatting about something else about Jockstein and his demand that we entertain. He was a pitman as well, My family, a lot of them were in the pits and stuff. So he intrinsically knew what the football club is responsible for within the community, and it has a responsibility to entertain, to play football a certain way. There's certain clubs that are synonymous with playing a certain brand of football. Winning is not enough, and Celtic certainly falls in that category. Now, the reason I mentioned Ange is because he said that his was born out of his relationship with his dad, and he used to get up. Obviously, they emigrated to Australia, but they'd get up during the night, and they didn't want to sort of get up in the wee small hours and be bored to tears watching a game of football. They wanted to be entertained, and I'm the same. I'm the same at home. I'm the same here now, and it's predictable. It's languid. We need to get that identity back. And Ange's now got this. The Spurs are saying we've got our Tottenham back. That's they're one of those sort of fabled teams that are supposed to be playing attacking football, and Ange's given them that, and I think that is born out of that attitude that Steen had, and that it's not. And the English Premiership, has bred that kind of scientific, homogenised, sterile approach to football. So, the lower echelon teams, they have to desperately stay in. You still can't polish a turd. Stoke City still Stoke City. At one time they had a bigger playing budget than Atletico Madrid, who were winning the league. But so you can't. Some of these games are turgid. But they don't. The pressure on them to stay in that league means that it becomes this kind of war of attrition a lot of the time, So it's only, for me, I only like to watch the big games, involving the Liverpools, the Man Cities, where it's going to be a decent game, when they play each other. But anyway, so that's kind of what I think about the
thing with the style and the entertainment. Absolutely, that'd be brilliant. But see, right now, it would also be brilliant just to be winning games, and I'm going back to that tomorrow night. Let's get the momentum going. I'm going to bring in some comments before we wrap it up for this afternoon. It's been a quick one. Jungle Lion, at least 10 to 12 squad players taking a wage and contributing zero. That was a big point of mine in the summer. Jungle Lion, I was talking about that. I made a list of 10 players that I thought would leave the club. A couple of them have resurrected their Celtic careers, but on the whole, I agree with you. I think that, and it's going to take time. It's not as easy as just getting rid of them. It's almost like a full-time job in the recruitment team to actually deal with the revolving door of players out the club as well. We've got such a big squad at the moment. Bobby, 1962, talking to Daniel, Maeda makes Taylor look better than he is. Yeah, and I think we need him to tomorrow night as well, Bobby. I think Maeda, I've said it before, I think that he is key tomorrow night, and also for the remaining games prior to the 30th of December. Brian, what you'd give for a Wanyama type just now? And by the way, I think that's why whenever Wanyama is mentioned, some Celtic fans are, I'll bring him back. It's not actually Wanyama we want back. It's that type of player we want back, And I think Alan Morrison spoke about it, that his biggest concern going into the Champions League this season was our lack of combative players, the athletic type, the physical type in the midfield. He spoke about it. It's not with hindsight. So fair play to Alan Morrison for pointing that out. Haddington boy, hopefully get the monkey off our back in a good win tomorrow night. The one and only game I attended with Feyenoord was the 1970 final. Fair play to you then to have seen Celtic in a European Cup final. It seems unthinkable that we could ever get to that point again. Big Dom, is it Dom Mackay? Remember Dom Mackay? Used to phone us, invite us to press conferences, not, banners from them. Are you going to engage with your audience and the comments? Of course we are, Dom. Big Dom, just phone me. Just phone me and I can talk to you that way as well. And Michael Ross, you're back in. This board are playing a dangerous game. I think they are when it comes to the fan base. I don't think the result should be that we get banned, be that the Green Brigade, the boys, 4 Tims in a pod. I think it should be about engagement. I think it should be about unity. It's a word that Ian used earlier in the show, and we need to sort it out, Michael. I agree with that. Getting Ovroski in the starting 11 move skills to left back. I've seen a lot of people saying it. I can understand why you would say that. But Jungle Lion points out, and this is something I think James French has mentioned a few times on the show, Scales wasn't great at fullback at Shamrock Rovers. I think unfairly we go to the Bodo Glimt performance because he was pretty poor in that game. But also, I think Celtic as a whole were pretty poor. I just got a text there from Celtic FC about tomorrow night's game. I thought I was getting banned from the press conference this afternoon as well. Thank God that wasn't the text telling me you're no getting in. Acsom Rabani will be representing Celtic, Acsom rather, at the Celtic press conference this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to his input as well. I think he's been a great addition to the Acsom team. JD, he's killing the game for 90 minutes at the moment. That's going back to a point I made about Brendan killing the game for 25 minutes at a time. Listen, tomorrow night is the beginning of a small group of games, I think, that lead us into that game against Rangers. And as Liam says, you know what? If things remain as they are between now and then, the 30th of December, you go into that game, it means that we've got a bit of momentum, a bit of a bounce, and hopefully we can start to stretch that gap at the top of the table. Because unlike some of the theories around the Celtic board, I don't like just being a whisker ahead of the challengers. I want Celtic to, look after our own backyard, focus on building a European side, and the domestic side of the game will look after itself. Thank you, every single one of you, for getting involved. Couple of wee things. Charity Weekenders coming up this weekend. We will be live for 12 hours on Saturday, 12 hours on Sunday. It's the 4th time we've done it. And this year, we are raising funds for wee Jamie Tierney, who is fighting against Duchenne muscular dystrophy. We've got a lot of Celtic podcasts getting involved. We've got a very special appearance from Liam Carrigan that Liam does know about, although obviously I've got to update you, Liam, on that one. And
all right.
Celtic Down Under will be involved as well. Really looking forward to it. Some old names, some new names. The Pierre Van Hooijdonk interview will finally be aired on the Acsom channel, and I'm really looking forward to doing a 24-hour podcast this weekend for charity. And following from that will be the Acsom night out, the Christmas night out. And unfortunately, some of the Acsom troops are not in Scotland. You'll not be able to attend. But if you want to come along, it's with Johan Mialbi at Gracie's, and there's fewer than 20 tickets available. The link is underneath this video. It's 15 quid a ticket. Come along and hear Johan Mialbi talking about his time as a player and a coach at Celtic Park. Thank you all for getting involved, 800 strong on this Tuesday afternoon. And thank you to Ian Conroy and Liam Carrigan for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.